Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I am Deb Philman, your host. And today's show is going to be what yesterday's show was supposed to be, but we had some technical difficulties. And as you may have noticed, I did a backgrounder instead about today's show. But don't worry, we'll catch you up. You won't have missed everything. Okay. There's some extra added bonus material in that show. So I would suggest going back to watch it. But we're going to get all the main points again today from Dave Brown. Dave Brown is joining us from Newberg, Oregon. He is the chairman, right, of the school board there. You're okay. And he's going to talk to us about the recall that he and some of his fellow board members are facing. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share this video so we can get more people watching and get the word out about this important recall. We want to fight it. We want to make sure that he and his fellow school board members beat it because it is unfounded, in my opinion, and it is not going to help the students of Newberg. So with that said, thank you everyone for being here. Let's welcome Dave Brown. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. Good morning. So as I mentioned to everybody, you are fighting a recall. Can you tell us the specifics about that? What's happening?
Well, where we're currently at right now is my fellow board member, Brian Shannon, was put under recall back in September. And so they had to get about 20 or roughly 2,600 signatures. And it took them the full time. They turned those in about a week ago. They started my recall a couple weeks ago, and there's a new law that's, whether you like it or not, they can kind of do e-signatures. And so they got mine in about a week ago, and they just duplicated, which was, I guess, smart, if you're trying to get something done. And so we're both on the they will come out sometime just after New Year's, maybe even after Christmas. And it's Oregon's a mail-in ballot, so everything comes out, and the elections office has 30 days to finish the whole process.
Now, what material are they putting out in support of the recall? What are they saying to the voters?
Well, I read their statement the other day, and I was not surprised, but you're always disappointed in things that are half truths and lies. So I went to make my statement up, and I had about my third draft going. It's a 200-word response, and I just took their items, line by line, and just told them why they weren't true. And so I was a little blunt, maybe, but that's you get 200 words to put your statement in there. And
right. So now to catch people up who missed the show yesterday, one of the main things that Dave and the other school board members who are facing recall have been trying to do is keep politics out of the classroom. I'm not even going to get super specific with any one thing. Like, you could say CRT, BLM, gender theory, all of the things we talk about on this channel all the time. Yes, of course. But primarily, they just wanted to stick to academics and leave the politics for where it's relevant in the lesson. So in other words, if they're speaking specifically about a political issue and it's relevant to the lesson, certainly the teacher, nobody's banned from speaking about things. The idea was just to focus on the learning and take it off these hot, controversial, specific pedagogies and methodologies where, politics is central to the conversation. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Right. And so you're not anti-LGBTQ, you're not anti-civil rights, or, you're not pro-racism or anything like that. You just don't necessarily agree with the prevailing narratives about how to fight racism in education, or how to be welcoming and inclusive to LGBTQ youth and things like that. You would rather have it be more, age appropriate, for example, more parental rights respected, and, not be so very specifically political. In other words, taking a very political point of view on the racial conversation. Am I being fair in that assessment?
Yes, I think, we didn't have this for the longest time. My 20 years at Newberg High School, we didn't have this. And I retired 3 years ago and then ran for the school board. And I think that, our whole goal is just to get politics out of the school. And because, when you start getting public, feedback on this. You have people that support it, but you also have people that are like, no, I don't want this in there. If we're going to allow this in there, then we have to come with every other kind of flag. And it's an endless run because people have such a varied interest. So
Right.
the politics were never intended to be in our school. This is for me and stuff. It's an adult agenda based
Right.
type of way to get politics in the school, and they've been successful. And
Right.
it's everywhere. It's not just Newberg.
Well, that's one of the things I mentioned yesterday when I was giving people the background, that it is a public school. Like, we need to remember, as teachers, as parents, that when you are providing essentially a public service, and the public servants are, the teachers are public servants, you serve all. You serve all. So you can't pick and choose like one point of view to serve, whichever it was. And then I specifically gave the example that I doubt that parents on the side that supports some of these politicized viewpoints would appreciate it if conservative teachers were going into the classroom and presenting a very right-leaning point of view in the classroom about specific things, that they would be upset. And so therefore the only right thing to do in a public setting, go teach in a private school that's geared towards that, right? But in a public setting, you have to keep it as neutral as possible so that everybody's rights are respected and nobody's playing favorites, right? You're not literally using the school to advance a specific side's politics, because these are public dollars. So that was a point that I made yesterday. It seems to get lost in all of these back and forth conversations, is that not everyone agrees with you. You know what I mean? It's like they'll come with their loud voices and their money from out of state and their New York Times and their this and that. And they forget that, Newberg is Newberg, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
it's
that's a really good way. I think everything's been accelerated so much in the last few years. If you're a parent out there, if you're in a community, I mean, I'm coming out of working inside of school. My wife's a 33-year veteran teacher, and we're shocked almost daily what happens. But I would just say, there's kind of that old saying about the Titanic. The iceberg is only 10% above the water. And honestly, if you're out there in a community, whether you're a parent or not, but especially if you're a parent or thinking about being a parent, that's kind of the theory you should go by. It's much bigger than you'd think. It's far deeper than you'd think, and it's been there for a while. So if you have like this lady I talked about, a third grade son, it's been there long before he started school, and it's just accelerated tremendously.
right. And
So
if he's in third grade now, that means his last full year of normalcy was kindergarten in terms of just school, right?
maybe normalcy. It's gotten, like I said, it even shocks me after being in school. But you made your point there, Deb, about all as a coach of almost 53 different seasons of sports to high school, middle school level. I would just say that all is what I've always tried to go with, and a lot of people do. Um,
Right.
so not picking anybody over anybody else,
Mhm.
but we do that now, and
Yeah.
to me it's really sad because I spent a whole career trying to embrace anybody regardless of who they were, um, and now we're getting away from that, and
Right.
that's bad for kids.
Yeah. It definitely takes us backwards. It's the opposite of progressive, which was another thing I said yesterday. I'm like, they call themselves progressives, and yet they seem like Bill Maher says it progressive phobic. Right now, it's like you start to bring up that, but it's not the 1950s, or but it's not the 1860s, and like and just bringing that up, a lot of people are like, oh, how dare you say that? And it's like, how dare I say what? That progress happened, history happened, that, things weren't perfect, but we've been steadily working towards a more perfect union, right? And even within schools, um, I make no secret on the channel, I'm not a big fan of the system, but I don't attribute malice to every single person involved. And I like to think that a lot of the people, especially in the classroom for a very long time, were working hard to try to actually make things better for kids, to have a better experience, better, education. It's just that some poor choices were made farther up the food chain, and that affected a lot of different things. But it, this idea that we've just been in stasis since 1776, right? And like it's in our DNA, they're a horrible place and nothing has improved. And now we have to completely blow everything up and start over again, is a rejection of reality. And when kids are thrust into that, I think it's very confusing for them. I mean, first of all, they're new on planet Earth. So all of this is new. Everything about it's new. And their brains are not fully developed to process all of these pieces of information. And so they'll be looking at something like, but my best friend in kindergarten was a different race than me, right? So they're looking at their personal reality shows that people are getting along and everybody's, my neighbors, and it's like we're all interacting, and I turn on the TV and there's like mixed race casts and all kinds of, football, baseball, basketball players, like successful and so forth. And then I go into a classroom and I'm told, this didn't really happen. It doesn't mean what you think it means. It's false. It's terrible. And, the kid's probably going, I don't know what's true anymore. Like, I see a thing and I'm told not to believe the thing. And that's very, very hard. That's a kind of cognitive dissonance that a young mind cannot handle because they don't have the experience or the vocabulary to fight it.
Well, our adults are having a hard time with that concept.
Exactly. You're an adult, you know better. And you're like, ow.
When you're 8, 9, 10, even when you're 13, 14, 15, if you don't have adults in your life that are being, straight up with you, it can really wreak havoc. And I always try to find it, with all I've worked with thousands of young people, and it's like, man, if you just tell them the truth, you can get them to work hard and have fun and be respectful and compete. And those were always our forum mottos. And it works for boys and girls. It works for younger, older. And, the biggest.
And when you believe in them, you've been
yeah.
a coach. So when you believe in your players, you believe in your students, and you make that abundantly clear, you give them a reason to push through. Life is difficult. It presents challenges, but you give them a reason to like push through to the next level. And that's how problems get solved. So even if we were to stipulate that we still have a long way to go, let's say in fighting racism in America, as an example, or for acceptance for LGBTQ youth, the way we solve that, in my opinion, and I like to believe the data backs this up, and evidence, like even qualitative evidence backs this up, is that we visualize the outcome we want and we believe in that outcome, and we tell the young people who are yet to be formed, in other words, they're not there. You make a racist. You're not born a racist, right? Or a bigot. And you just live that life. You don't need to necessarily like subdivide everybody into groups and go, now this is this and that is that. And I think it actually has the opposite effect of what you're trying to do when you subdivide everybody. And my impression from what I read in your background is that you guys as a school board have just tried to do that. We just want to keep Newberg whole, and we just want to treat our students like people, like human beings, and we want to keep this politicized atmosphere out of it and just give them the best possible education they can get as individuals.
Yeah, I think right now what's tough is like when you're on the school board, for example, you're pretty limited on your ability. You don't get press conferences like the NBA, so you don't get to go in after the game and explain the board meeting and answer questions from, the newscasters. You just don't get that opportunity. I kind of wish we did, because you could explain in more detail what happened like they get to do in the NBA. But we're pretty limited on, our resources and how. But when we don't comment, then you get attacked for not saying anything. If you do comment, you get attacked for what you said. Right. And so it creates quite a tough line. I was going to say earlier, I had a coach named Larry Seiler, who was my line coach years ago. And we were talking about a tough group of 8th graders. This was a tough group. They were a fun group to work with, but they were a tough group of kids. And we were trying to figure them out. And Larry said one day, he goes, Dave, everybody needs to be validated. And I think you do, Deb. I do. Even, I know I'm a lot older than you, but I mean, an 8-year-old does, a 64-year-old does. Everybody needs to be validated. Right. And at some point, somebody just needs to say, hey, nice job. Hey, way to work hard, whatever. But we all need to have somebody tell us we're okay.
I agree. I think the challenge now is we've taken a good idea, which is, we want to have people feel like they're, that the adults in their lives believe in them and, value them and their contributions and so forth, and that they are worthy of good things, respect, a good education, all that, just like decent treatment from other people, all that. And I feel like we have somehow blurred the lines between that and boundaries of other people. So in other words, we took, don't be unkind and don't exclude arbitrarily, don't, those kind of things. And we've morphed it into whatever I believe and whatever I say and whatever my truth is the truth. And if you aren't going to validate that, you're abusive. Like
Right.
we've taken it like all the way to the other side to where now it gets difficult to help a child deal with people just not want to be their friend. Like, that's also life. Not everyone's gonna wanna be your friend, right? Now, it's unfortunate, but learning to deal with that is part of maturity. It's part of growing up and realizing that I'm still okay, even if that guy over there doesn't wanna be my friend. That doesn't mean anything about me, right? That's about him as much as it is about me, if not more. And now it's kind of like, "No, it isn't. If you don't like me for any reason, then you are a fill in the blank." And so I think it's like good idea gone to the extreme has become a thing that makes kids fragile. So we, in our zeal to validate people, I think we are inadvertently teaching them that they need that in order to be whole. If I'm making myself clear.
Yeah,
Like,
when you have kids, I mean, they look at you. I've had so many kids, hundreds of kids tell me this through the years. They're watching me and you and their parents. And, they watch very closely. And, if we're being victims and playing that card all the time, they're going to do it too. And,
sure.
and that's a really unfortunate route to take because when we do have a real victim, and we do, then I think we miss that opportunity to help somebody who really needs help.
Absolutely. And that's so true. It's getting lost in this is that there are legitimate victims. I mean, there are people who suffer all kinds of trauma, like objectively that's awful what happened or whatever. And when everybody has trauma and everybody is suffering and everybody's abused in some respect, then they get lost. It feels almost like disrespectful to people who've gone through things that are trivialized when somebody says, "Oh my god, they commented on my hair. I'm so traumatized." Like or whatever, that somebody made a little insult that when we were kids would have been like, "Well, that was rude." But then you'd get on with your day, right?
Well, I
It
think,
would
yeah, I was in Texas about a week ago, and we were at the Fredericksburg, Texas, and at the Admiral Nimitz World War II National Museum. And my friend and I came out of that and had lunch. And the thing that hit us the most was how soft has our society been since the World War II, the Great Depression. And
yeah.
even at my age, I was born in 57. We haven't lived through anything like that where people had to sacrifice big
Mhm.
time, not just a little bit of sacrifice, like, you don't get to have Starbucks this week. They had to sacrifice. And that was kind of our big takeaway from that, how many millions of people sacrificed during that period of time in history. And I
Yeah.
think now, that we're going through tough times in our country, we're showing we're not very tough, as a country
Yeah.
now. And
There's a and
you know,
and and it's weird because whenever we talk about that, people will say, "So you want people to suffer through a world war?" And it's like, "No, I wish we had come up with a way or I wish we had recognized earlier that there is a potential downside to peace and prosperity, okay, for decades at a time, and been mindful of it enough to say, how do we teach resilience and fortitude in the absence of external factors forcing it on us? In other words, how do we contrive a way to do it and what can we take advantage of to help kids learn these same skills that our forebears didn't have a choice, right? And many of them suffered, so many of them didn't come out the other side completely whole, right? So it's not optimal to have that be your proving ground. So we're smart people, where we had plenty of wealth, we had plenty of like opportunities to study this and think about what creates grit in a person. And to be honest with you, I think we did do. I've read research that came out in a book called Nurture Shock, where some guys assembled um, the research that actually exists about what really builds self-esteem, right? That was done during the self-esteem movement. And what they found is that there was plenty of research to suggest that praising and trophying and everything all the time was counterproductive and that the better way was to set up challenges that were like realistic risks, calculated risk, let the kids fall on their face, get back up, try again, things like you do in sports, but without the trophy for every single person. And that was kind of not chosen. In other words, the research was there for both things, but they chose the one that in all likelihood sounded better, made people feel better, and had better immediate acceptance. Like, you don't really have to sell anybody on it. Here's what we'll do. We'll eliminate losers. That's what we'll do. And everyone will feel good.
Yeah.
And on the surface, it's like, yeah, okay, that sounds awesome. Everyone will feel good about themselves. And then they will succeed because they'll feel good about themselves. But they forgot that what the research actually showed is that kids are really super smart. They're savvy, and they know when they're being rewarded and they don't really deserve it. Like, they didn't really earn it. And then they lose respect for the adults. They lose respect for the process. They become cynical. So that research existed in the 1980s. They just stuck it on a shelf and didn't look at it anymore. Now, we can argue all day long why that happened. I don't know. But that's what was missing, I think. And we didn't teach that. So, I mean, now you are sitting on a school board and you're facing challenges you didn't create individually, right? You want to help these kids, but it's a big deal. And I want to get to this question. Gerald asks, because you can probably answer this. Should teachers teach approved curriculum, or should they have latitude to teach whatever they want? If they can teach anything they feel like it, who sets the parameters?
Yeah, I'm reading that on my screen too. There's, before I answer that question, I just like to say, working in the schools, we have, Newberg's really in a tough spot. Our unions are leading the charge for the recall, but not all teachers buy into that. But regardless of all the politics, there are some great teachers, and there's probably great teachers in every school. And so I'd like to thank all of them for what they do and what they bring. We all have our teachers that were impactful for us. I think we know that there's a lot of liberties taken, and it's gotten a lot worse lately. We've allowed politics into our schools now, just bottom line. And certain teachers would never touch it, and they still don't. And they're professional. They follow what they were taught in school to do the right thing. But there are too many right now that in our area that are bringing us into their classroom, whether it's signs or banners or what the words they choose to use. So is it happening? Yes. Is it happening from all teachers? No. But
now, is there any rule or anything in place that prevents them from says you can't do this? Like, you can't take down the American flag. That was one example, I think, in the background, that teachers were doing that. They were just choosing to take down the American flag in the classroom, or they were claiming it was too political to have the flag up. And then there were other people who were continuing to teach, whether it was BLM curriculum or CRT or things like that. What is in place to say you can't do that?
There's a state law in Oregon where you have to have the American flag and the Oregon state flag in Oregon. And I think that's true in probably most states. As far as the other things shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. But when we get into, a teacher can talk about tough things in a classroom if it's part of a lesson plan. And again, a lot of teachers do a good job with that. But again, we've kind of allowed the agenda in also, and we've seen it. People have been caught teaching this stuff in different, places all over the country, big time, so at that point it becomes indoctrination rather than not education. And I know everybody doesn't want to hear that over here, but that's where adults have come in with their agenda too far. And I know, like in our area, it's just gone too far. And that's why we've had to make changes in our school district. And it's been really hard, because you don't want, what most parents want is their kids to go to school, be safe, learn, come home, every day, put another block in the wall, and then get ready someday to move on to their adult life. And I would say to all the adults out there right now, again, you are the most powerful people out there. Make sure your schools are doing what you want. And because you would never let anybody just hurt your kids at the mall or the store. So make sure they're not getting hurt in the schools. And when they say you don't accept, just no. Be tough. Be a tough parent.
What was somebody is asking about the specifics in terms of what precipitated the recall? Was there a precipitating event? And then somebody's asking, what is the legal basis? So it's kind of a two-part question. Was there a precipitating event that had them go, that's it, we're recalling you? And
Sure.
then what are they basing it on? Like some law is there a legal basis, or is it just we don't like you?
I'd say both. I mean, I think a lot of this gets real personal. The attacks from the one side are pretty personal. We all of us on the board that voted for getting politics out of our schools have had our jobs gone after, lost jobs, have been personally verbally attacked. Some pretty rough stuff. It's really unfortunate that people go to that level.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've had that happen. Uh, Anybody can recall, after they've been in office for 6 months, you can recall. The unfortunate thing about it is we got hammered when we terminated our superintendent because of cost. This recall will cost probably somewhere in neighborhoods of $70,000 to $80,000 to run the recall, and the school district has to pay for that. And no money out the door for the people that just sign a paper for a recall. They can just run a recall. And
So you
so
had to terminate the superintendent because he was too expensive, or she?
no, we
Okay.
terminated because just the direction of the school district, and felt like we really needed to stop the direction we were going in and go in a better direction.
Oh, so the superintendent was instrumental in kind of pushing it towards a politicized classroom. Is that the case?
I'd
Or
say our whole district office was pushing for a certain way for our district to go, and it was pushed for a couple of years, and
Mhm.
there was just no change on the horizon. So the only way to change that, when a board has one employee, that's a superintendent. Then the
Right,
superintendent has all the other employees within the district,
right.
and had a lot of conversations about, hey, this is happening. This is happening. We're losing too many good families. We've lost a lot of families. We've lost a lot of good educators too. And so we're really on a teeter totter here of where public schools are at least in our area.
Mhm.
Um, we've got to just do better.
Okay. So now how many members are there on the school board?
7.
Okay, so it's 4-3 majority, right?
Now,
You have
now it is. Yeah. My first 2 years, and for myself and Brian, we were 2-5. We never won a vote on anything, and that's just how it works, a board. And then the elections
right.
came in 20, and we picked up 2 more seats.
Right. So to the commenter who is saying that, it's not the direction of the entire board. Well, it never is. Or I should say it rarely is, unless you have a monopoly of one point of view on a board. It's always somebody's losing. And as Dave pointed out, when it was 2-5, then it was he and Brian who were losing on that score. And the people spoke. The people of Newberg went to their polls when it was time to elect school board members, and they chose 2 more school board members to have similar points of view to Dave and Brian. That is the people. Those are the parents. Those are the people whose children show up and provide the ears and bodies to be taught for the teachers in the classroom. That's why those teachers have jobs. That's why the principals have jobs. That's why the superintendent has a job. And all of it's paid for by those taxpayers. Those people showed up, and many of them probably showed up to vote who don't have children in the district and still chose Dave and Brian. So, or people to join Dave and Brian. So they spoke. They spoke after losing. They didn't like it. They didn't like the direction the district was taking, and they removed the superintendent. That's literally their job. And that's exactly what's happened around the country in other districts where they replaced more conservative members with more left leaning members and elected superintendents who are implementing every left wing policy known to man. That is, you want democracy. That's what it looks like. It's not you win every time. It's not, we have 3 and you have 4 when we get our way. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So, and as far as how people get fired, it is at the discretion of the school board, who is the superintendent. Am I wrong? That is the one employee you get to hire and fire. Is that correct?
Right. And when there's another misconstrued term out there, it's called no cause. So when somebody has a contract in that situation, no cause just means we're just going to go in a different direction. But
Right.
people on the left have wanted to take that and say that we did it illegally. And no, we didn't. It just means you don't get out in public and do a press conference and talk about all the specific uh,
Legal
reasons.
decisions, hirings and firings can legally happen behind closed doors. It's a closed, you have a closed session to discuss something because it's a legal matter. Isn't that correct?
Well, you have an executive session where you can only talk
Yep.
about one topic at a time.
Right.
And that was done. And again, like you said very clearly, I mean, if everybody gets one thing out of today, it's like when a board votes, uh, when there's 4 votes to terminate and 3 to not terminate, that's gonna happen. And
Right.
so each board member gets they're entitled to their 1 vote, and they were
Right.
elected by the public. So
Right. And the biased policies are the nature of the beast. You see, guys, and somebody's asking, why are you having this public school person on here? It's a homeschooling podcast. It's not a homeschooling podcast. I talk about the crisis in American education. Okay. Now, we all, myself included, are conscripted to pay for this system, whether we like it or not. Therefore, I have an interest in how it's operating. Maybe not specifically in Oregon, but since federal dollars go there too, and some of my dollars go to the federal government, I care. Also, I have children, so they're growing up in America, so I care. I talk about public schools and I invite people on who represent public school issues because it is partly the cluster of public school that is fueling the rise in homeschooling. And maybe parents wouldn't need to homeschool as much if our public schools were actually working for students and not for the system. So it's all tied together. I personally, at this point, think the system is unsalvageable, but that's my personal opinion. I have reasons for it, but I also expect that not everybody agrees with me. As such, I bring people on this channel to talk about what's actually going on in public education so you can be the judge. It's called presenting a balanced viewpoint. So you can hear what he has to say about how he's trying to keep Newberg schools great for students, and you could decide that's awesome. And that's going to make Newberg schools good enough that nobody needs to homeschool there. And fantastic. That will be great for the parents of Newberg, Oregon. But you could also decide this poor man and his fellow school board members are getting recalled because they're really trying to keep politics out of the classroom. And, that just shows the nature of the beast. And oh my God, I don't want this happening in my school system. And I don't want my kid caught up in the middle of this. Maybe I should find another way. There are many different ways you could look at this, but if I don't bring the information to you and I'm just sitting here yammering on about homeschooling, what's my selling point?
well, Deb, I
Right?
think what you're saying is 25 years ago, we homeschooled for a year just because of circumstances like all parents face, right? I would say for the people that wrote that in to say, please listen and stay tuned, because when you have what's going on in public schools right now between public, private, and homeschooling situations, what I'm seeing in Oregon, and it's exciting. And I'm a product of public schools. My kids were. I have coached in a private school, so I've been exposed to that, and I've done some homeschooling. Uh,
Mhm.
but I would say to all the homeschoolers out there, we have things going on in Oregon where people are getting really creative and they're coming up with amazing different scenarios that were never available even 5 years ago. And I think the homeschooling situation is going to, because there's some fantastic people out there that are not, say, in the public education realm, that are putting together programs that are awesome. And I think they're developing those because they have to. And there's a lot of parents out there that are just darn good. And those homeschool people are getting better and better and better and better. And I would like to see what's the term called? I'm slipping my mind about school choice. So if we have a choice between spending your taxpayer dollars, I believe in school choice because I believe in competition. And we're
Right.
just handed a check every year from the state of Oregon. Go run your schools, Newberg. Doesn't matter
Right.
really how good we are. We're just going to go run our schools.
Right.
And I wish our standards had to be a little higher. But I also wish the parents could have that school choice or homeschool choice. So I think the homeschool people have an exciting time in our world because of what public schools going through. Uh, I think we're allowing a lot of really creative people to be amazing out there.
Right. Somebody has asked me, like, well, how do I know what's good for Newberg, Oregon? Aren't I in North Carolina? I am in North Carolina. I don't know what's good for Newberg, Oregon. I just am deferring to Dave and his fellow school board members who were elected by the people of Newberg, Oregon. And, if they want to recall him, we'll see. If they don't want to recall him, we'll see. but I do know what's good for kids in the sense that I've done deep dives into some of this material and this pedagogy. I hate to pull rank on everybody, but I do have a master's degree in education and I've studied these issues just a little teeny tiny bit. So I also spend a whole lot of time every single day studying what's going on and how it impacts children and the rise in mental illness and the rise in suicide and all sorts of other negative outcomes for kids. And so I think I have a pretty good handle on what's not working. I definitely know what's not working academically because I spend an inordinate amount of time talking to subject matter experts, probably more than most members of my audience. And I have an opinion. I never purported to be an unbiased journalist. I'm not just bringing you news. I'm bringing you commentary. Yes, I'm bringing you commentary. And I'm bringing you other people who can come on and give you their point of view. And you guys get to be the judge. By all means, please go do your homework. Prove me wrong. That is fine. I would rather you did that than just listen to some talking head on TV and go, yep, that's what I believe, even if it's me. All right. So there are obviously some people in the audience who are accusing you of breaking the law and deserving this recall, to which you say,
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, everything we've done, we hired a lawyer so we could get legal advice. We did it all completely legally. The way we terminated superintendent, we followed all of the Oregon state laws. You know, the threat of lawsuits has been something that's it's really unfortunate. And I would just say it just shows the desperation of people who don't agree with you, who they'll do anything. I came home from Texas to the rumor that my wife and I were going to get a divorce. And my wife showed me the text, and we laughed. And so at the last school board meeting, at the very end, I just had to do it. I just said, "Hey, thank you to those people at this particular school for caring, but we're the happiest couple in the state of Oregon. Appreciate you thinking about us." And you know, there's been all kinds of things like that. There's been some really, rude people, but we didn't do anything illegally at all, not even close, and never would. That is the three people I work with: Brian Shannon, Trevor DeHart, and Renee Powell. They don't care what kind of person we're dealing with. They love everybody. They are good, solid people. And as far as a recall, I guess we could recall the other three board members too. So if people want to go down that route, I think they went down that route because they don't like hearing the word no, and they don't get their way. They don't get their ribbon. And but that's what elections are for. And we have 2022 coming up and 2024 coming up, and our country, as well as Newberg, Oregon, has to make decisions. It is unfortunate when people don't get their way that they have to just throw out accusations like that was illegal. And
well, I also love how everybody's for civil rights, except when it comes to hiring legal representation. Well, that must mean you're getting ready to break the law. No, it actually means you're getting ready to understand the law so you don't break the law. That's generally why people hire attorneys, is they're saying, we want to, we're relatively new at this and we need to do a thing and we want to make sure we do it within the confines of the law. Can you give us some advice? And that's basically why you hire an attorney. It's not because you're getting ready to break the law. If that's the case, I hope you never need to hire an attorney, because apparently, according to you, that means we should all presume you're guilty of whatever it is that you're about to be accused of by whomever, because that's not how due process works. You're entitled to representation. And if you're a school board, you'd be irresponsible to entertain the notion of firing a superintendent without first checking with legal. It's just basically what you do. So I would like to see the law that says that he hired the attorney illegally.
We didn't. But when you look at, I've spent quite a bit of time with lawyers the last couple of months, and I think I have a minor in law degree now. But, if you're not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. And if you don't run a podcast and have a master's in education, you just don't. And so a lot of people like to pretend they know everything. They don't even know how the school board's supposed to work sometimes. So
no, they don't. They think that you can actually meet with all your fellow school board members behind closed doors, like randomly at any time. You have to have very specific topics. You can only talk about one topic, whereas you independently, as the chairman of the school board, can do certain things independently without consulting with the other school board members. And in fact, it's to your interest to do so, because if you consulted with 2 or 3 of them, but not all 7 of them at the same time, then you'd be in violation of open meeting law.
Yeah, you can't meet with more than you can't have 4 of us meet at the same time.
No, you can't do it
so much, and we've never done that. it's just something, it's a law, it's a rule. So once the other
Right.
people were voted into office, you just can't do that.
Right.
And I tell
Exactly.
you what, myself and the other three people that are on the way we vote is, again, they don't break the law. They're good people.
Right.
They've been attacked mercilessly, but they try to do everything the right way. They run
Right.
businesses. They are just really good family people.
Right.
They're solid. They're not crazy people out here trying to go through some recall thing. Um, but I will say, Deb, this is pretty exciting for everybody out there that kind of looks at like a recall effort. The thing that's pretty cool is we've seen a what I would call a revival in prayer, a revival in people getting involved. And I think a lot what your show is trying to promote is get up off the couch and do something.
Right.
And I think I've seen a ton of that out here in Oregon. So there are the people on the right don't yell as much, but they're starting to stand up more. And the people on the left who aren't nearly as tough as they think can scream and yell all they want, but the people are starting to stand up, and that's exciting.
Yeah. People should get involved long before it gets to the school board level.
Yeah.
I mean, but the reality is that a lot of these curriculum decisions are made at the state level and then they're handed down. There are mandates that are put in place and so forth. And the only recourse a local town has, and the people in a local town, if they want to have any say in what their kids are being taught, or rather how they're being taught, what they're being taught, is to go to their school board and say, can you please at least choose a superintendent who is going to hire principals and teachers who are going to implement this mandate in such a way that it mitigates what we perceive to be negative, you know, repercussions. What I would like to ask the people who are saying that the teachers are victims and the students are victims is, what is it that your students are going to be missing out on because of Dave and his school board members keeping politics out of the classroom? What is hurting them about having an American flag, which is in accordance with Oregon state law? What hurts the students and the teachers by having the American flag hanging in the classroom? What is hurting the students about not having BLM curriculum in the classroom? I'd really like to know how this hurts the students. How are they victimized by the American flag? That is my question for the people promoting this recall. How are they victimized by this? Because that's what I'm seeing. They're victims. You're not a victim, Dave. I don't think Dave ever claimed to be a victim. I think he
No,
just said, we're trying to do the best thing we can. But according to the people who've elected us, it would be the same in reverse if it were people you elected. And we're just doing what we're elected to do. And you don't like it, you lost your elections, and wait till the next election. But you want to recall when you hold the minority seats and you're finding any which reason to justify it. Illegal this, illegal that. They were literally hired to do what they're doing. That is why they were put on the school board. There was an election. There were 3 members. They could have replaced, they could have, or there were 4. They could have replaced him with more left-leaning people and didn't. Why didn't they? That's just, I don't live there. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that for all this, like, save our democracy, we want democracy, we want the people of, to vote on things. Well, they did vote. And apparently it sounds like you have mail-in ballots. You have like making voting about as easy as voting can be. What happened?
I think the people in our community, they did stand up, and our voter turnouts are too low. They need to be higher here and across the country. But people did stand up and they voted, and we had another one person that lost by 143 votes for another seat on a school board. So that was pretty close. And the people did speak up, and so I'm proud of people for. That's why we get a vote. But you don't always get to have your way. And again, I would say to all the people who just don't get their way, uh, you know, instead of spending all this energy on recalls and attacking and a personal attacks, going after jobs, all the things that have happened to us, is could we just focus maybe on math and arithmetic and education?
Yeah.
I had a person call and we talked about the flag, and my comment back to them is you're going to have to go through most of your life without a flag for feeling safe. To me, in our schools, if we want to feel safe, we create that culture with people. And when that culture is there, whether it's in one classroom or the whole school, you've got a great situation. We've all worked in jobs where somebody's created a great environment and we love going to work. We've also all worked in a job where that environment's not created and it's a tough place to go to work. Think about our kids. They're not even adults yet. And if that environment was safe and, that's coming from people, not props.
Right. Well, so I don't like, all I know is from the outside looking in, and I'm platforming this because, as I've told people, I want people to understand how school boards work and don't work. I want them to understand how messed up the system is and how powerful the influencers are who don't even live in the systems on both sides. Okay. So you don't have a system that works for students. On balance, you don't. These are adults in here, and they've all got a political agenda. Okay, every single one of them. If it were the other side, I'd say the same. That is why I don't believe in public education as it's currently constituted. And I've been very open about that on this channel. I think the system is set up to do exactly what it's doing. I think it's set up, and especially at this point, to where people are going to be at each other's throats ongoing until we finally just break this up and say, you know what? This should all be dollars back in the hands of the parents. You have an EBT card, have a little card and take your little dollars and take them where you want to go. If you want to have a public option, vote locally and have a public option, but be forewarned, public is public. Not everybody's going to agree, and you're going to end up in little fights. But when public goes all the way up to the White House and all the way to the Department of Education, which has only been in existence since 1978, we forgot that. You're going to have bigger fights with more dollars and more powerful people influencing what the curriculum is, what the teachers are taught at the university, what the belief system is that comes into the classroom, whose dollars are getting laundered for which political party. And that's just across the board. It's going to become a more inherently political activity because it's run by the flipping state. So this is the nature of the beast, guys. That's what I talk about on this channel. So that's why I bring on, this is a mess that he's in. It's a mess.
You want to know, like on the spending dollars, the people are trying to recall us to spend over $100,000. And you know where most of that money came from? Outside of our town. We just started spending money now with people just donating to get signs back up and try to fight this. But I'll tell you, during the elections, the rumors were thrown out there that we had national Republican politics spearheading our effort. No, we did not. It started with 2 people here in Newberg. And we were told that we had an agenda based on a national political level. No, we didn't. We were just a bunch of local grassroots people that said, no, we want to go in a different direction. And I would say the 4 of us on the board, if you want somebody to represent your kids, we're the ones that want to represent your kids and you. I feel very important or very strongly about supporting parents because it's one of the most difficult jobs of a lifetime. And I know what it's like. I've worked with thousands of parents. It's so hard to just get your kids through school when you don't have all this craziness going on. And so that's where our hearts are at. We all volunteered for this because we want to help. And like I said, there's so many people that have come alongside of us and said, thank you and appreciate you being our voice. And but I also was told the other night by somebody who is a Democrat, and they were talking to me, and they were very. She said, "I'm even a liberal," but she said, "I will tell you this: I support what you guys are doing." And the gap between, say, you, Dave, and maybe people that are progressive is the Grand Canyon, and trying to bridge that.
Well, they're not progressive. They're regressive. They're neo-segregationists, and then they're trying to trans the gay away from kids. It's not okay to just be a gay kid. You're born in the wrong body. Let's talk to you about transition and let's have trans story hour, So, these are things that parents don't necessarily want inside the school. Nobody wants, to ban it or censor it from the world, but not in a K-12 public school paid for with tax dollars where not all the parents agree. If you agree and you think it's great, then awesome. Go do it at the bookstore. Go do it at your private residence. Go do it wherever you want to do it. This is America. Fly your flag as high as you want. But in a public school, you're supposed to have a standardized, age-appropriate, skills-based, evidence-based curriculum. That's it. That's what taxpayers are paying for. They are not paying to support your political agenda of making the world into whatever it is that you would like it to be. And that's true for both right and left.
Right.
But I'm not getting the impression from Dave here that what he's trying to do is bring prayer into the school. He's just saying it's nice that people have been praying for him.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Oh, big difference. I think that I encourage everybody, and we go to a great church, but that's for after school. We're in public school.
Oh, now we're getting to bullying me. I'm a
What's that?
homophobic. I'm a homophobic trans hater or something like that. No, I'm not.
No,
I'm
not
not.
at all. Matter of fact,
I don't know who Judy is. I don't know how Judy teaches. I have no concern for Judy. So
I think that people that throw those labels out too quickly, holy smokes! I mean, I don't care what if somebody's brown, black, or white, what their gender is. It's just I'm going to take care of every person I come across. Bottom line, don't hate anybody. Want everybody to be helped out. But I would say when it comes to when you're looking at the how people are attacking what we're trying to do, it's still fighting for the right thing and having parents to say, we put a great deal of effort into buying a car. You should put 100 times more effort into that than
100%,
buying a house. You should put
choosing the
1,000 more
school.
times not raising your kid
Right.
and know what's going on. And public schools can be awesome. I've been part of those situations, but we've slipped. And we're not doing what's kid-based. We're doing what's agenda-based. And I'm shocked today, Deb. I have people in our community that I've known for a long time, and I'm pretty blown away how mean they are. So sounding a little.
Well, I think it's really sad that they're mad at you for praying with players before a game when each and every one of those players had the perfect right to not pray. It's not like you went up to the players and said, you will pray or I'm not playing you today. It was just you wanted to pray. Players who want to pray, you're going to pray. Big whoopsie shit. I mean, like, oh my God.
You know why that prayer happened?
Hurt because he's praying for us.
That prayer happened because we had somebody pass away on our team. And we had to sit back as a team and come together as high school kids and fight through that. And that wasn't a daily type thing. That was
Did you force your players to pray, Dave? Did you force them? Did you force them to pray?
Oh, heavens no.
Okay.
We had a kid pass away on our team.
So their rights were respected, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think there are teachers in America right now? Do you think there are teachers in America right now who are bullying and berating their students into agreeing that white people are oppressive?
Do I think some are? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know about Newberg. I can't speak to that, but I know for a fact it's happening in other districts. Do you think that's a rights violation, a freedom of speech and association violation? Do you think it's verbally abusive? Yeah, I do too. So I don't hear some of these people saying that shouldn't happen. But I don't see them having even the smallest concern for parents who are worried that their kids are going to be groomed into believing things about themselves in terms of their sexual identity that may or may not be true, but they're too young to really challenge it or understand. And then, we won't tell your parents. It's okay. We'll just change your pronouns and we'll change everything on the side. Won't tell anybody. It's okay to keep secrets from your parents. Literally classic grooming 101. But I don't see anybody worrying about that either. But they're very, very concerned about the prayer you had for a dead teammate.
Kids can come into our schools right now, middle school and high school, and they can come in and let's say their name is Deb and they want to be Danny today. The teacher has to go along with that. And they can do that on a daily basis. We have boys going into girls' bathrooms and girls going into boys' bathrooms. We have so many crazy issues going on that are so wrong for kids that this is where I want parents to see what's really going on. If I hear one more person say transparency and then they cover this kind of stuff up, I just want to scream to the rooftops because my main goal, and I'll tell everybody, I don't care who's listening right now, I want everybody to know the truth. And I feel like the truth, once people have the truth, they have to run with that. If they want to go homeschool, private school, stay in public school, they need to know the truth. And I still believe there's a lot of educators out there that don't want to be part of this, but it's a big thing coming, like you said, from the state level, and they're kind of have to go along with it to keep their job. And that's why a lot of people have gotten out. but not everybody has that opportunity to get out. They're a 20-year teacher and they wanted to retire as an educator and get into PERS and retire someday. And they don't want to retire or stop working now, but they're forced
Right.
to go along with this. And they're stuck, so
Right.
there's teachers and ed assistants that are stuck too. And there's a lot of peer pressure coming big time in education right now, that if you don't follow along with all this, you're going to be harassed. And that is a
Right.
fact.
Right. And so let's run these down for the people who haven't completely lost their ever loving minds who are watching. Let's go through the accusation. So you've been accused of being a racist, to which you say,
Absolutely not.
okay. And how do you, and I don't think you should have to prove that you're not a racist, Dave, but what
Yeah.
would you like to say in addition to absolutely not? Because clearly people are saying, oh, he's lying. He's really a racist. So how do you respond to that?
I've spent my entire life, I was raised by great parents. Brown, black, or white, don't care. Everybody's important to me, always has been, always will be. Never, that's a tough term to have somebody throw at you, and they throw it out there very, very easily,
Casually.
very casually. And it's
It's
so
just
wrong.
become like, this thing that we just call anybody. It's a way of shutting people up. What do you say about the charges of fiscal mismanagement, that you've mismanaged district funds?
We when you do a no cause contract on a superintendent, there's obviously they get a severance package, right? And so there's that money. Flip that over into the amount of money we've lost, millions of dollars for people leaving our school district. We're roughly in that $9,000 to $11,000 per student per year. We won't feel it this year. The government works very slowly, so it'll be a year and a half before we feel those numbers. But we've lost millions of dollars in people leaving our school district, not because of flags, not because of banners and things like that. They were leaving before that because they just don't like what's going on in public schools. And so I think we were extremely responsible because we had to make that decision to save our school district.
Right. Okay. And we've already kind of covered the illegal hiring of the lawyer. That's the other charge, that the lawyer's was hired illegally, to which you say,
We had to go through every meeting being told that's a legal matter. That's a legal matter from our district office staff. And
mhm,
after about 3 meetings like that, we said, okay, hey, wait a minute here. We have a budget. We're going to get an attorney that can advise us in the middle of a meeting and have somebody, because again, if you're not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. You don't understand. Lawyers are an incredibly educated group of people, but they know the law, whether you like them or not. They know the law, and we had to have that legal advice on the spot. And the person we hired is full of integrity, and regardless of what people think, he's there for all 7 board members,
right.
and would do the same protection for all 7 at any time.
Are you permitted as a school board I mean, if you have the majority, are you permitted to fire a superintendent because you disagree with the direction they're taking the district?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to people why that is so?
Well, the school board ultimately, the big 3 things you work on, should be working on, other than recalls and things like that, would be the budget, the superintendent, and you have your facilities, and you have the direction, the policies of the school. The policies would be what you consider laws or
Mhm.
rules. So
Mhm.
that's when you say the word policy, that's a law
Okay.
within school. And each school district has pretty similar ones, but they'll have different ones within that school district. And so when we're going through those processes, we have one employee, and that's a superintendent. And at that point, the superintendent is responsible for all other employees. So we can't, for example, call in you as a principal and discipline you. That's not your job.
Okay. Now, why do you think, in your, like, what is your gut read on why these people here, and really these people, I mean, the people who are taking time out of their supposedly so busy days doing things that are much more important than what I or you do, and have much higher IQs than I have, apparently, and apparently don't use drugs, even though I don't either. Why do you think they hate you? Why do you think they really hate you? What's the real reason, in your opinion? I mean,
That's
we can't get inside their heads, but what do you think?
No, that's a really I've thought about that a lot when I'm walking my chocolate lab, Lucy. I try to think about that, like why do people hate so much in the first place? Not trying to sound really too nostalgic on this, but I remember as a little kid listening to Martin Luther King talking about, you know, don't judge me by the color of my skin, but judge my kids by the content of their heart. And I thought about that my entire life, and I've always tried to abide by that. And I think, I try not to judge people, even when they're mean. In the last year and a half, people have been a lot meaner than they've ever been. But I guess my honest answer to that would be there's a lot bigger thing going on here than just schools. There's a lot of forces out there that are really wanting to hurt our country. They don't like our country. You said it earlier in the broadcast. And we live in a great country. We live in a fantastic country. We've made mistakes, and we have to learn from every one of those. But I think they're just really unhappy. When my wife and I were talking about this the other day, when we see these people that are very rude, we're going, man, I haven't seen them be happy for quite a while.
Right.
And there's people over there that I used to work with, and I was like, they were pretty fun to sit back and chat with, And now they're just like they're angry all the time, and that's their issue. Is it a spiritual warfare issue? I think so. Is it an issue where they bought into this thing that we need to dismantle the country of the United States and start over and have socialism? Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that really want that. And man, when they don't get their way, they get on Facebook and just go crazy. And that's unfortunate, because if you and I you're in South Carolina, right? And I'm in Oregon.
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina?
I think, that people are saying it's not hateful to dox someone. It's not hateful to send them death threats. It's not hateful. Yeah, there are people who hate him. They've made that abundantly clear. Now, maybe some of you here, maybe I'm misconstruing what some of you are saying, although you've said some pretty hateful things. And I find it deeply ironic, because if I so much as say that I oppose the affirmation model of care for prepubescent children who say they are gender confused, that I oppose the administration of puberty blockers, certainly without parental notification or consent, and that I oppose telling children they should that you're going to help them keep secrets from their parents, that makes me a hater. You can say that to me, but you can call him a racist, call me a homophobe, call us a whole bunch of slurs and names that inaccurately represent our point of view and our feelings and emotions, but I shouldn't perceive that you're hateful. Got it. Understood. It's called a double standard. Learn it. So, yeah, you're behaving hatefully is what you're doing. And when people amongst your ranks who support the cause that you're doing are doxing him and spreading rumors about him and his wife and sending them death threats, I'd call that hateful behavior. I think if that happened to members of the community that agreed with you, you would call it hate. I think if a whole lot less happened to members of the community that agree with you, you would call it hate. A whole lot less.
Yeah, I think for people to, as I've coached, I tell kids, it's at the end of the day, you have to brush your teeth, go to bed, look in the mirror. How hard did you work today? How did you treat people today? And I would say that to your whole audience, when you brush your teeth tonight, how did you do? Give yourself a grade on, again, people out there who call me those things or call you those things. It's like, man, you better come talk to me, because that's not me anymore. That's not me.
We go online and we do this.
Oh, yeah.
You're going, Dave. I'm going to make sure your life is history. I'm going to make sure you're not in Newberg anymore. Your career is over. I'm not a hater. I never said I hated him. He used to be great until I completely decided he did everything wrong. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you're really doing a great job of demonstrating how reasoned and rational your approach is. Like I said, if you have so much confidence in your ability to recall this man, I don't think you'd be here right now on my channel, which is a pretty friendly channel to Dave. And I've already stipulated to the fact that I'm biased, and my loyal audience is probably also biased. And the only people who are watching this are either already agreeing with me or already agreeing with you. So don't you have better things to do? You're not going to convince anybody by being here and attacking me and attacking Dave. You're just not.
I'll tell you too,
You're just making fools out of yourselves.
The people out there, as adults and parents, I can go to bed every night knowing that I've tried to do my best by the people I've coached and my kids, but our kids watch us closely. And when they see people acting out like this, they're going to act out like that, especially their parents. So their parents should be very careful about um, what they're saying and acting, because it's pretty hard to reel it back in at the dinner table and then go right back on Facebook or do things. And young people, they're watching the adults all the time. So should be very careful.
Well, yeah, they are watching, they're listening, and it whatever will be, right? I will say this, I certainly wish you the very, very best, and that this comes out, and you're vindicated and everything. But if it doesn't, I gotta say, you might be better off. That's all I'm gonna say. It doesn't seem like this is going anywhere good. And, obviously as I said, I'm biased, and I think you'll have a probably a happier life. But if you want to continue to serve the people of Newberg, I hope you're able to. I just think that this crop don't deserve you. So that's what I have to say about that. I really love to know what it is they are so traumatized by and missing out on that they have to remove you and are accusing you of all of these misdeeds. Because I have yet to see any examples of how the children and the teachers are being victimized by the removal of this superintendent. What was the superintendent doing that was so amazing? Remember, we're talking about Oregon now, where the governor said, we're not going to require any kind of, grades and special standards for graduation. It's just like when you finish 12th grade, you can be graduated. So that's fine. Yeah, that's doing really well by the students. No, all social promotion all the time. We have 30% of American students can read properly coming out of third grade. That's across the entire country. That's not just Oregon. Okay, go look it up, the nation's report card. We have a growing illiteracy problem. We have people who can't do math, and they are obsessing over, like, what is the policy going to be about anti-racism? Here's an anti-racist idea. Teach people to read. You know what a lot of people have in common who end up poor and in prison and on the bad side of law, where everybody claims it's so racist? They can't read. Teach them to read. You want to see equality? But knowledge is power. That's what it is. Literacy is power. Numeracy is power. Financial literacy is power. Historical literacy is power. And nobody, least of all Dave, has ever said, don't teach accurate American history. In fact, it is my understanding, he said, let's add more. Let's add more. Let's just keep the politics out of it. So we can all agree that we can do a way better job of teaching history in America, but a way better job doesn't mean throwing America under the bus and claiming it's so much worse than every other country in the world. If that's true, then why don't you move to one of them? Why do we have people coming across the border by the tens of thousands to come here for a, quote, better life, and we're told we should swing wide the gates so they can have that better life in the supposedly horrible, oppressive, racist, homophobic nation of America? Please make up your minds. So, like I said, Dave, I wish you the very best, but this has not been fun. I lived in Portland for 1 year of my life and could not leave fast enough. And that was close to 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, oh yeah.
You probably wouldn't enjoy it today.
Oh, I wouldn't even set foot there. But this all this has done, this is like negative PR for Oregon is what I'm seeing in the comments right there. And I know that doesn't reflect every single person in Oregon. I get that. But the nation has a pretty dim view right now. They love to make fun of the South. They love to make fun of us. But you know what? If you look at economic recovery, you look at the health statistics, you even look at the academic results of the states they love to hate, and they're all better than the states that carry on like this. This is a recipe for disaster. Maybe it's time to relocate, Dave.
No.
They'll be happy, and maybe you'll be happier too.
We've had friends move, and I've lived here my whole life, but I mean, Oregon's a beautiful place. Newberg's
it's gorgeous.
A really cool town.
It's absolutely gorgeous. There's no question as far as how the landscape and the location is beautiful. There's no question about that. They've taken one of the most spectacular pieces of geography and just made it uninhabitable for people with rational minds in many, many parts of it. So,
Yeah, can I say one more thing?
yeah.
I would I would really encourage people across the country, whether you're, private school, homeschool, public school, whatever kind of education, or you're not even in education. We know so many people who don't have kids anymore in education, but they're fighting, they're standing tall, and everybody matters, and they're battling, and our country's worth it. Try to just maybe go back a little bit towards the Depression, World War II, when people had to really stand together side by side and fight for our country.
Mhm.
And Deb, you've been an encouragement today, just to me, because I just have one more person I can talk to that will talk with me and not call me names. And
I'm not calling you names.
fight for this.
And I would have been happy to have a polite civil conversation with people who had the opposite point of view. But when you carry on like this, when you carry on like this, I mean, why? There's no civility there. There's no just rational disagreement that's going on.
So why should we move to North Carolina? What's so good about it?
No, you shouldn't.
Okay.
Our governor is almost as bad as Brown. So, no, they're calling me an Oregon hater. I don't hate, Jesus. I'm working in a business arrangement with somebody from Oregon who I respect and admire very much. And Oregon is a beautiful state, and there are a lot of wonderful people there, as there are in every state in this country. My point is that when you have a preponderance of politicians and people in positions of power in a state that seem hell-bent on taking it down, like taking it away from progress, away from civilization, away from the bonds that bind us, regardless of our incremental disagreements, then you make your state less desirable for people who just want to live their lives and raise their families and do their jobs and so forth. You just do. You're not a beacon that says, come live here. That's just reality. Look what's happening to the outflow of people from California and New York and places like that. People would like to stay. It's not that they want to leave. They're reluctantly leaving and packing up those U-Hauls or moving to different towns or whatever, but they feel like they have no choice because things are not set up for them to thrive. They're just not. And
John F.
there's
Kennedy,
intolerance, extreme intolerance.
John F. Kennedy was a Democrat, and he told everybody, "I'm a liberal Democrat." He said that, but today he would be labeled a Republican. He would be a conservative, not a Republican. He wouldn't do that, but a conservative. And
he was a conservative Democrat to begin with.
We've moved too far. We've just moved this needle way too far one way, I really believe that it's the people in the middle that will come back, whether they're in North Carolina or Oregon, and they will have the common sense to lead our country, not in a party way, but just in a healthy way. And that's
Right.
when I still feel like we can do that. And so I'm an optimist.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. And, as far as what the allegations are, I admit that I don't know all of them. Like I was given this much time to platform this, and I read the backgrounder. And so that's why I asked you to address what the accusations are here. I'm just point blanking you, like, address it. Like, did you do this? Did you do that? I can't verify it or not. I'm not an investigative journalist. I am platforming this issue because I do have concerns about the trends that I see in education. If somebody comes to me and says, we are trying to keep politics out of the classroom, that's going to catch my attention, because that is what I want to do. I want to keep politics out of the classroom. I would like to keep government out of the classroom and abolish the government schools. But here we are. That's not likely to happen. So this is the country we all have to live in. And I just don't think that politicizing the classroom is a smart move for any of us, because backlash is a thing too. I wouldn't like it any better if it were coming from the other side. I'm not a side. I'm an independent. If anything, I'm libertarian. So I'm not sitting here saying like I'm pro-right as opposed to, anti-left. I'm anti-politics in the classroom. I am pro-rational thought. I am pro-critical thinking. I am pro-individual opportunity to form your own opinion. That's it. And what I'm seeing in the prevailing trends pushed by unions, pushed by universities, pushed by, curriculum developers, is against that, against objectivity. In fact, I've seen objectivity referred to as racist, against high standards and rigor. I've seen that referred to as racist. Against parental rights and transparency, especially in healthcare policy within the school, and loco parentis is being taken to the nth degree, which I oppose as a parent, even though my kids are no longer in public school. They have friends who are. I have friends who have kids there. I care about humans. I care about little people. So it matters to me that people who cannot consent are being asked to consent to things without their parents' knowledge that they don't understand the long-term implications of enough to do so. So I platform people who come to me and say, we are trying to get politics out of the classroom. They're going to get platformed.
Yeah.
If you're saying I want more politics in the classroom, I'm probably not going to want to have a chat with you. I don't want to platform that. That's my right. I don't have to.
Before the World War II, Goebbels, the Nazi, said that if you tell a lie one time, it's a lie. If you tell a lie 1,000 times, all of a sudden it can kind of become the truth. Right. And I think if we all look at what's being said out there right now, and you look through the BS and you're going, whoa, wait a minute, back up. I mean, critically think about that for a minute. Sit in a chair without your phone and think about stuff. There's a lot of things that are being said out there, and we accept them very quickly. And again, there's a lot of things out there that are being said that are said 1,000 times. That does not make them true. And we live in a great country, and we're never perfect. The forefathers never said, this is a perfect, Declaration of Independence. We're not perfect. It's a moving liquid thing, but it's the greatest country in the world that anybody's ever had a chance to live in. There's more opportunities for everybody than there's ever been in the history of the world. And we got to quit whining, fussing, and complaining about everything. Work with people, and these strong things that are coming out of the far progressive side of this thing, and like you said, regressive. You go to China and see how that works for you. You're not going to get your Starbucks and your sushi every day for lunch. It's just not going to happen. Talk to anybody that's traveled around the world, and they'll tell you we live in a great country. People live in far worse all over the globe.
Now, have you, so people are saying that they are trying to set up a meeting with you and staff. Would you be open to that?
Well, I mean, one thing I've heard, if I hear this term again, help me understand, that's always an indicator that somebody wants to just tell you how to think. So I'm always open. Right now we're getting attacked pretty hard for people who just, they want to tie us up in all kinds of just talk. It's like the Facebook thing. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And yeah, I've heard of a couple things that are happening where people want to chat. We have our next board meeting in early January. We have an intern superintendent coming. I'm excited about that. Would really love to have a school board meeting where we actually talk about education, Deb, where we might talk
That'd
about
be nice, wouldn't it?
Math. Yeah. So that would,
I've seen so many of them recorded, and I'm just shaking my head like, where are the students and all that? Like, where's the actual education?
Yeah.
There's so much going on that has nothing to do with their skills or, any of that. And it's almost like people have forgotten what school is for. It seems like school is becoming a place to do everything but teach the kids what they need to know to grow into successful, independent, self-sufficient adults. Like the only things that we need to focus on are their activism for these issues. And I just don't think so. In fact, I really truly believe what I just said, that if you give kids access to the skills-based and as they get older, opportunities to use the skills to improve their knowledge and their thinking and so forth, that liberates them more. That fuels progress more than direct instruction of this is how the world should be. This is how you should think about people. You shouldn't think this about people. Like all that kind of talk is not really as helpful as it would seem. it seems like it would be helpful, like you shouldn't be a racist, but in effect, you're drawing attention to things that people can then use to their own, to their own agenda. So when you focus on racial essentialism, for example, if everyone be very, very race conscious, you're now drawing attention to something that is not a net good. It's not a net good to walk around being like completely critically aware 24 hours a day that you have a certain color skin. That is a far cry from saying you should never judge another person by their immutable characteristics, be they, race, sex, gender expression, whatever. You should not judge another person purely on the basis of things they did not choose and cannot change, or certainly cannot change without really dramatic action. Okay. You shouldn't do that, because that is not inclusive. That is anti-liberal. To me, in the classical liberal tradition is we see each other as human beings, and we treat each other with dignity and decency as human beings. And we don't first go, you're this kind of human being. No, you're a human being. And when you tell a child, when you start saying things like, well, people who look like you are X, and people who look like you are Y, and people who look like you have power, and people who look like you don't have power, that sticks with them. You're the adult and they're the child. They're more likely to believe you and internalize that. And it simply isn't accurate. Even if there are historical facts that say this was at one time literally true, and now in some respects it may be, situationally true in certain things, and blah, 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 it is not an immutable fact that is always and forever. It's not like because you look this way, this is always the case. The deck is stacked against you and you have to reverse the power polarity or you can't get ahead. And increasingly, that's the lesson that they're learning. And I can't help but oppose that. I think it's anti-human. And so I can't support it. I just can't. And so if that's the format of anti-racism that's coming into our school, I'm not going to support it.
Well,
just not.
Look at history. I think one thing we've forgotten, and today, 2021, is when you go back throughout our country's history and before we were formed as a country, we didn't have 2020 vision like we do now with, a bazillion cable networks and news like we have now. They were living in the moment, doing the best they could with very, very raw circumstances. And there were some fantastic decisions made. This country progressed very rapidly in good ways. There was also really tough decisions that were made that, if you could get a redo, you do a redo. But those people didn't have the 2020 lens we're looking back in 1941. They didn't have that. We have it because we look back and say, well, you should have done this. And the same thing in education right now. We don't have that 2020 lens to set back and, look back and, or we do have that. We can look back and see the mistakes we're making. But in the current moment right now, I would just challenge all educators, go to school and focus on reading. We don't do that. We focus, if you're an activist, are you an activist first or an educator first? And that's as simple as that. I mean, make that decision and go be a professional like you were taught to do. Stick to your code of ethics as an educator. An educator used to be a very honorable profession. Are you being honorable to it? And
right.
I'm not going to back off, Deb. There's certain things when I talk to people, like in our schools and such, they're going to have to toughen up and get their feelings out of the way because they need to go be an educator. And if that hurts their feelings, then so be it, because you're the adult in this world. We're taking care of kids. We don't make Nike tennis shoes. We don't make, paper products. We deal in people, and our focus has to be on what's best for people and impressionable young people. So leave your activism at the door and go educate, and then go do your activism.
Right.
And that's kind of the bottom line where we're at. And it's a war. It's a fight out here. And there's great people and there's people that are, I think, have been swept up in this whole movement, that it's sad to see people that were once pretty nice, not so nice anymore. I'm hoping and praying that they can kind of come back around. And
well, one thing that you've brought up the past and saying, well, in the 40s, people were together and so forth. And I think what people may be missing about that comparison is that what I hear you saying is back in that day, we had a stronger sense of community that went beyond our political leanings. In other words, you might have one political view and your neighbor had a different political view, but you were first and foremost neighbors and Americans and humans. Like you could come together to support a common cause, and education used to be a common cause. In other words, educating our children, American children, used to be a common cause that I think most Americans agreed upon, as far as, well, yeah, they should all learn to read and they should all learn to write. And so, they should all learn our history. We even agreed in terms of how we should learn to value, our founding documents, not because they were perfect, but because they laid out a plan for, as they say, forming a more perfect union or whatever. So in other words, the structure is there to improve upon, right, through the process. And so when I think about the past, it's not that like everything was great, because obviously it wasn't. We also had Jim Crow. We also had a segregated military. We also had a lot of bad things. But it's to say that there is one thing that kind of got thrown out or lost in our march for progress. And again, it's ironic to me that people will say, things are so much better now. And then in the next breath say, nothing has improved since Jim Crow. Which is it? So either we're better now because we have realized some of our flaws and some of the progress that we didn't make as quickly as we ought to have, and so forth and so on, and how we didn't live up to our founding ideals, or we're just as bad as we always were. And I interviewed somebody last week. I'll recommend this book to you and all of the people watching. This is called Hollowed Out: A Warning About America's Next Generation by Jeremy Adams. And what he talks about, he's a school teacher. He's been a teacher for 20 years in public school in California. And what he talks about is the impact of loss of community. So here's the book, Hollowed Out by Jeremy Adams. It's not very long. It's really excellent. And he talks about how the loss of community and a push towards a kind of radical individualism where you're disconnected from anything larger than yourself, and it becomes each version of truth is the truth. There's my truth, your truth, the other truth. There is no objective truth that we can all rally around, like human beings are all created equal, or freedom of speech is universally important, or we have due process rights under the law and it should be equality under the law, not equity. We don't, like, you get certain privileges and you don't, like, we don't, that's going backwards, right? So he says, when we focus too much on everybody should be validated for their own individual little perception, and there's no objective truth and there's no larger sense of community or value, you get a fragmented, isolated, hollowed out version of the self that doesn't know who they are. And people like that are much more vulnerable to like tribalistic kind of messages, like join this gang, join this group, join this collective, be part of this thing that all you must think this way and you must have these beliefs. It's almost like they gravitate towards a nouveau kind of religion, just minus God, right? And I'm not a religious person, so I'm not speaking like, oh, it has to be God. I'm just saying that having a sense of civic value, like civic values, or, we are a community, we Newberg, Oregon are a community. And even when we disagree, we really do have to sit down first and foremost and talk amongst ourselves. I think that's gone. And not just Newberg. It's like everywhere in America. We are polarized to a level where our kids are feeling it, perceiving it. They're seeing it on social media, and they don't know who they are. So it's very easy for them to look to the adults in their life and say, tell me who I am. Just tell me. And so when an adult comes along and goes, oh, well, you're this, 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 and this, and this, let's find you on the chart. It's an appealing message, because they don't really have that. They may not have it from home, or they're being explicitly told those are the old ways. That's old fashioned and bad. And don't pay attention to that. We got to go forward, and you need to be liberated from these old ways. And it's still not giving them anything inside. And so he's saying that he thinks, that's his hypothesis, is this is feeding the mental illness crisis and so forth. So I'm concerned about politics in the classroom because I see that feeding that. I don't think it helps. And I think the disintegration of basic skills instruction is hurting them even more, because now they can't go independently and figure out who they are and what they, want, just even reading literature, reading history on their own without anybody's filter, because they don't read well enough. They can't do math well enough to process the statistics that are being thrown at them 24 hours a day in the news. This percent of this means that percent of that, and that percent, if you don't understand math and somebody just starts framing statistics a certain way, it's very compelling, isn't it? But when you do have a good sense of numbers, you can look at it and go, who's presenting the numbers and why are they presenting them this way? And isn't there a different way to look at this that maybe gives us a more accurate picture? Now you can be a critical consumer of news and information and propaganda and all that. But if they don't have those basic skills, they can't do that. They can't do any of that.
Well, Deb,
They
I
just
think
have to listen to the adults.
that right there is kind of like what we go through. We're told we don't understand, we don't know. And I'm being told that by people who have never worked in a school. I have. I've seen it, and I've been on site councils and committees and meetings. And you're told you don't understand. But here's one that's a little scary. If you can't read really well and comprehend, and you don't write very well, and you can't do the math, and I've talked to those instructors in our schools
Right.
who flat out are so frustrated by the lack of math abilities, then you lack the ability to question. And if you lack the ability to question, then what's that really mean? That means there's a control issue going on there. And that's maybe more on the conspiracy side. But, when people don't understand to ask the right questions, then you've kind of got them where you want them. You boxed them in.
Right. Exactly. And, it's I whatever. I just like I said at the outset, I didn't bring you on here because I, knew every single fact of what's going on in Newberg. I brought you on here to tell your story because
Sure.
I don't like bullies, and the information that I had was that you were being doxxed and threatened and so on, that it was largely led by very powerful political groups like the ACLU, the teachers union, and people from outside of Newberg. And I did see enough evidence of that with my own eyes that I thought it was worth hearing from you and letting you speak your piece and say what you had to say. Because short of talking to all the people of Newberg, when I see those markers, when I see, the ACLU is involved and there's a lot of, money coming in and AOC is getting involved and things like that, already I'm starting to go, huh? And in fairness, the same would be happening with the left. If they started seeing like very powerful right-wing organizations getting behind a recall effort in a left-wing district, they would do the same. They would say, hang on a second. Why are these people getting involved in this? Isn't this kind of politicizing it? And is this what the local people really want? Why are these organizations coming in from, out of town or out of state with their big dollars? So that kind of raises the red flag for me. And I don't need to go digging into every last little fact. It's not about a brag about it. It's just not what I need to do.
Yeah.
That's enough for me to platform somebody and say, all right, I want to hear from you. Why are these big organizations coming out against you? You've said your piece, and so have they. And we'll obviously see what happens in a week, right? Is that
Well,
basically
yeah,
what it's going to happen? The
yeah,
ballots go out the 27th, right?
yeah. I think we have about a month. I think if leave people with this, it's they're using Newberg. They know. I think people know on both sides, though. To be fair, on this recall, that we're the battleground of Oregon, and both sides are doing their darndest. But there's a lot of forces out there that don't want us to succeed. And if they can shut Newberg down, then it'll be easier to shut other towns down. I've talked to people in towns nearest, 50 miles, 100 miles away, and they're starting to go through the same thing. So this won't stop with Newberg. We're just, see, people said we're the tip of the spear. Okay. It's not really fun to be the tip of the spear, maybe, but this isn't just going to stop with Newberg. It's going to come to every community everywhere. And I just ask people to be more informed than you've ever been. And you won't get that just by watching TV news. You're going to have to listen to podcasts like
Or
this.
this show.
This show.
It's like, I mean, you've heard, what Dave has to say, but like I always say, go do your own homework and figure it out for yourself. This
Listen.
is an hour and a half. I mean, if this matters to you, you better dig in deep and figure out what's really going on. And it's not it's also something people need to understand about school boards. It's not the easiest thing in the world from the outside looking in to find out what's actually happening when it comes to the conversations going on with the school board and all that. You really ultimately only know what goes on in those public meetings. And if there's been a legal executive session, they can't talk about it. Right? You can't talk about what goes on behind the closed doors in those
No.
sessions.
No, you can't.
So,
It's and again, there's been a lot of lies put out there in the media about some of the stuff that happens. It's not true. It's just not true. And again, that's being discerning, adult out there and going out and finding the facts. If my kids were still in school, I'd be a whole different parent than I was 20 years ago. I'd want to know everything going on. And that's a challenge because we're all busy with jobs and things like that. So uh, it's not the same education as it was for me, for you, Deb, or the 30-year-old parent. It's not the same. Don't think it is.
mhm,
And maybe what was extreme 25 years ago from my family homeschool maybe
mhm,
won't be so extreme now, and
right,
there's a lot better options than there's ever been. And then maybe it's
sure,
private school. There's some great things, and there's
mhm,
some not such great things about private school. So
right,
I've still, I'm here to fight for public schools. I think all three can coexist. It does seem pretty daunting that we can have a victory here, but I'm not going to give up. And again, we've got a lot of great people in Newberg. We really do. Some fantastic people. So for all the people out there who hate, I've had far more people come alongside and say thank you and give you a hug, shake your hand, pray for you.
mhm.
Uh, that's awesome. So
Well, we'll see
I
what
think
happens.
a lot of
I
encouragement.
certainly wish you the very, very best. And because if nothing else, you're standing your ground and fighting for something you believe in, which, is admirable, especially if you're doing it civilly, which it seems like you are. I don't see you calling anybody names.
I'm not.
But, I would respect people on the other side if they were not like this.
Well, I'll listen to your show again. I appreciate you doing what you do. Thank you very
You're
much.
you're very welcome, and, let us know how it goes.
Thanks a lot, Deb.
You're very welcome.
Everybody.
Bye.